The Bund always said what it did for socialism. But at the same time, the Bund was an increasingly important fighter for Jewish dignity. In 1903, the Bund had a traumatic showdown with the Russian Social Democratic Party. Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks and the future dictator of Soviet Russia, demanded that the party be a top-down party run by a central committee that gave orders and that those orders would be followed. The Bund said, no, the party should be a confederation with the different groups having independence. Lenin said a member of the party has to be a full-time party worker, which meant that the party would be a tiny group of professional revolutionaries. The Bund said, no, the party should include the entire working class, people who pay dues. And Lenin was successful in getting the Bund expelled from the Russian Social Democratic Party. This was another stage in the evolution of the Bund. And it forced the Bund further to confront who they were. And the Bund came up with this idea of the right of the Jews, the right of the Jewish worker to cultural national autonomy. That is, it doesn't matter where you live. You can live in Moscow, you can live in St. Petersburg, you can live in Baku. But if you want to send your kid to a Yiddish school, and there are other Jewish parents who want to do that, you have a right to do that. What Lenin and Stalin said was, no, a nationality is defined by territory. If Ukrainians want Ukrainian schools in Kiev, that's fine, but not in Moscow. If Azerbaijanis want Azerbaijani schools in Baku, fine, but not in Omsk. And if Jews want Jewish schools, well, there's no room for them because Jews don't have a territory. Jews are not a people. Jews are a caste. Yiddish is not a language. That's what they were saying to the Bund. And that forced the Bund, in turn, even before it began to take a clearer stance on Yiddish, to say, listen, we don't know what will happen in the future, but the Jewish workers speak Yiddish, and they have a right to that language if they want to exercise that right. And so that, too, was a step in the evolution of the Bund. The next step was the outbreak of the pogroms, the revolution of 1905. And this was the so-called heroic period of the Bund, when the Bund fought pitched battles on the streets of Warsaw and Lodz against the Cossacks, when the Bund fought back against the organizers of the pogromists. It was during that time, in the revolution of 1905, that workers spontaneously in the slums of Warsaw and Lodz attacked pimps and burned the brothels. Now, what that showed was that an important element in the attraction of the Jewish working class to the Bund was this desire to achieve what was called in Yiddish epes shener, epes besser, to have a better and a more wholesome life, to get rid of the pimps, to get rid of the brothels, to get rid of the crooks, to live like a mensch, even if you were living in a slum. And this is something that the Bund offered. The Bund also began to offer what was called in Yiddish Mishpachdigkeit and Chaverschaft. We're a family. So you're no longer just an oppressed anonymous worker, a cog in a shop. You leave the shop and you're part of a mishpacha. You're part of a group that values you. You're a chaver. More than any other Jewish political organization in Eastern Europe, the Bund took an interest in the problems of Jewish women. And some women, like Esther Hrumkina became important leaders of the Bund. The Bund, as I said, was anti-religious. And the Bund took advantage of the fact that the Jewish religion in Eastern Europe didn't really know from conservadox, conservative, reform, reformadox, reconstructionist. You kept Shabbos, you ate kosher, you followed Jewish law until you didn't. And if you didn't, very often it all went to pieces at the same time. And for many workers, in fact, this became an all or nothing thing. Once the Bund began to explain that religion was hokum, many workers, I wouldn't say most, but many workers who started to doubt religion very quickly accepted this totally secular view of life and stopped keeping the commandments at all. By 1910, the Bund had become much more Yiddishist, much more interested in Jewish culture. The Bund was now demanding that in a future socialist state that there be Yiddish schools. The Bund occupied a very interesting space. And this would be the dilemma of the Bund right up until World War II.